I get asked for junior lessons so often, whether it be from parents or grandparents, whether their kids are very young or teenagers, that they want to get into the game. And unfortunately, I wish I could teach them all, but I just don't have the ability to teach them all. So what I want to give to you, lately I've been teaching a lot of newer juniors that want to get into the game, which I think is fantastic. And whether you're a junior, or honestly, whether you're an adult, there's 3 things that I think are so critical for us to understand. So what I'm going to do in this video today is I'm going to break down what are the 3 most important things that a new junior golfer should know, with the goal being that if you're a parent or a grandparent watching this, you could actually take this and start to instill this in your junior player. Sometimes people have questions about lessons and frequency and costs and all those different things, but if you've got a player that you just want to introduce them to golf and get them to enjoy the game, there's 3 things that we're going to talk about today that are so critical. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the grip. The grip is scary for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't want to talk about the grip. But if I've got a new player, one thing I know for sure, if you have a bad grip, it's always going to come back to haunt you. So we might as well talk about the grip right off the start. And problems I see a lot, especially with juniors, is their hands are in the wrong place. They've got some separation. But I want to break it down. There's a couple of key things I think we can do to explain the grip. And I think for golfers, the first things that I want them to understand is that when they pinch their thumb and their index, there's this seam that it creates. And this can be a great visual cue for both juniors and for parents coaching them to help them understand how to grip the golf club. I always like to talk about the top hand first. So if you're a right-handed golfer, we're talking about your left hand. And the first thing we're looking to do with that seam, a fault that I always see, is everyone always grabs it with what we call a very underneath left hand. And what happens is sometimes there's a gap in that seam, or that seam is pointing off towards our left shoulder. If we want to have a good left hand grip, or at least a good starting point, is we want the thumb and the index finger to be together, like so they're pinching, and we actually want that seam to be pointing more towards our right shoulder. A great way to do it is we can actually pinch and place, and then from there we can close. Or for some people, let's just pinch, get it on the club, but then from there we're actually going to twist our hand so that we get the seam pointing towards the right side. A common mistake that I see for so many players is they have it in the palm a lot, and then that gives us this look with their left hand. We want our lead hand to be more in the fingers, and a great visual is let's get that pinch understood, and let's get that seam pointing more towards our right shoulder. So if I was to set up right now, I've got my pinch, I come in, and what I like to do is I actually kind of like to get my hand down with it pointing towards my right shoulder, and then close. So left hand on first, our lead hand on first with that seam pointing towards our right shoulder. Another checkpoint for someone is how many knuckles we see. If I have someone with a bad grip and I see them set up to the golf club or the golf ball and they look down and I ask them how many knuckles they see, right now I don't see any because I've got that big gap and my seam is in the wrong spot. But now when I get that understanding of getting the pinch between the thumb and the index and getting that point towards my right shoulder, I now start to see 2 knuckles on my lead hand. So we can use the seam and we can use the knuckles as well. So now that we've got a good left hand or a top hand, now let's put the right hand on. A couple of things we're looking for here. We'll talk about the seam in a minute. But when we have our right hand, this lifeline right in between the 2 pads, that lifeline is an important one for us because oftentimes that lifeline is where the thumb of our lead hand will go. So I've got my good left hand on here. And then now as I go to put my right hand on, I'm thinking of that lifeline and placing that on top of my left thumb. The other thing I can do as well as what I'll do with my right hand is, again, I'll look at that seam. And the seam on my right hand, I want pointing more towards my chin. A lot of people ask, should they interlock? Should they overlap? Should they 10-finger? All 3 of them have won major championships, and I believe all 3 of them are in the Hall of Fame. I think most golfers end up being interlock. The problem that I have with 10-finger, what happens is oftentimes there ends up being a little bit of separation there. So if we've got a new golfer that we're looking to get them to understand the grip properly, Let's get that left hand on properly with the seam towards my right shoulder. Let's get that right hand on top with that seam pointing towards my chin. And then we interlock the index finger and our pinky finger. So from the top view, it'll look like this. Left hand seam, right hand on top, and then underneath it'll look like that. So that's the grip. Now, this is not a law, but the thing that I hate seeing is when juniors come to me and they've got these really bad grips, but yet they've been playing the game for a while, and then when I try to change it because I know it has to be done, that's when they say, well, this feels so awkward. If we've got a new player, everything's going to feel awkward to them, so let's at least give them the gift of a good golf grip. So the second thing that we're going to talk about now is length of backswing, and especially for younger golfers, we don't always have the understanding of how to rotate our body. So what do a lot of them do to make a backswing is they lift their arms a lot. And this is such a common thing that I see with a junior golfer where they've lifted their arms, they've overextended, that club gets way past parallel, that left arm gets bent. That's another one that is such a nightmare to fix. So when we have a good grip, the visual that I like to coach them through is I want their backswing to be the letter L. And what I mean by that, with this good golf grip, let's have them make a backswing where it looks like we've created a letter L. So the shaft is at 90 degrees and this left arm is straight. Now for a lot of you might be saying, whoa, 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 that's way too short. For a lot of players, the thing we need to do first is we need them to get to understand how to keep that lead arm a little bit straighter, but maybe also prevent them from lifting, which so many of them do. If you send your player to a coach, once they've learned good grip, and from this position, we can teach them some rotation and some other things, but one of the most common things that I see with a junior golfer is they just get in this position right here. And then their parents tell them to keep their head down, and then it's all a mess from there. So number 2, with that good grip, let's make this L backswing. And that's going to keep our left arm pretty straight, and then that's going to keep that shaft pointing pretty vertical. Now from down the line, when we look at that L, when you're mom and dad, let's say when we create that L, I don't want that L from this view to be at 90 degrees. I want that L to look like it's roughly 45 degrees. So from face on, let's get them to understand that when we make a backswing, we just go to L, that's it. And then from this view, when they do it, we have it create a 45-degree angle. A way that I'll coach them through it a lot of times is I will actually get in there as the coach, and I will just guide them in the backswing to get to that L position and to get to 45 degrees. So I'll have them come on in and grip, and then I'll literally come in and I'll say, okay, let's make a backswing on 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'll get them back to this position, which has the L on a 45-degree angle. So we've got grip, which we'll call a standard or maybe a pretty neutral grip. And the key thing with the backswing is we're just looking for a shorter, controlled backswing with a pretty straight left arm. I really like that L visual because if we just tell them to keep their arm straight, they don't know exactly what that means because we don't have the coordination. Now I'm going to jump in here for one moment because I said something earlier. Avoid the pitfall of telling them to keep their head down. And the reason why I had a junior come to me a few days ago where the parent told them to keep their eye on the ball. That was the only feedback. Well, here's what their swing looked like. They told them to keep their head down. So they made this really long backswing, bendy arm, but then mom and dad told them to keep their head down. And then what would happen is they would chunk almost every single shot that they hit because they made that really long backswing with the lifting of the arms, and that's what caused them to lose their posture. So mom and dad said, oh, well, just keep your head down. When it was the arm, that was the problem. No good players are ever actually told to keep their head down. If their body moves correctly, their head will stay down. So let's get that grip and that controlled backswing with an L as a great starting point. And I believe as a coach, it's easier for me to lengthen a backswing than it's to shorten one. Now the third one that we're going to talk about is understanding a balanced finish. And the way they like to cue it for kids is, I want you to swing as fast as you can, but I want you to be able to hold your finish. And what I mean by that is we can get them in there, and I want them to, they're going to get back to this L backswing, and they're going to let it rip as quick as they can. And I want to be able to encourage them to, can they get to that finish position, and can they hold their finish? Balance is an acquired skill, right? Kids don't have the best coordination. We don't have the best balance. But the tricky part is early on for someone that if they're not cued to do that, they end up having such a hard time controlling their body when we see this move all the time, or they fall forward or backwards, that the coordination is really challenging. So get rid of keep your head down, and let's encourage them to swing fast, but hold their finish. So we got our good grip. We're going to go L back swing. And then from there, we're going to come to that balanced finish. And when they come to that balanced finish, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, this is how we're going to audit it. The first thing we're going to ask them to do is hold their balance to a count of 2. L back swing, 1, 2. And what grandma and grandpa are going to audit is their body on top of their left leg or their right leg or their back leg. Because there's some kids that when they think balance, they'll do it like this, where they're like, hey, I held my balance, but they're on their trail leg. So the way that we're going to audit this, good grip, L back swing, 1, 2. Are we on top of our left leg or on top of our lead leg? Some parents will ask, is it okay if the foot moves a little bit? If we're coming to that balanced finish, whether it be because their ankle's rolling or their foot is turning, I'm okay with that. When we get to this position, are we on top of our left leg? The other 2 things I'll add from there is let's make sure that that trail heel is off the ground. And the way that you can challenge them is we'll set our grip, L back swing, 1, 2, and then we'll ask them to lift their trail foot up. I call that the ballerina balance. And for those that are kind of cheating the test, they're going to get here and they're going to lift, and they're going to fall back. So 3 main things I think are such critical things for us to teach newer golfers. How to grip the golf club, let's control their backswing, and let's encourage them to swing quickly, but to do so within the limit of being able to hold their balance. So last one here, grip the golf club, L back swing, aggressive swing through to our 1, 2 finish, and then we can see if they pass the ballerina test. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please post them down below. Let's get our juniors into golf. This is a beautiful game, but if we want to navigate them, even if we're non-golfers, let's teach them how to hold the golf club properly. Let's understand the importance of a controlled backswing, and then from there, teaching them that skill of balance on the way through. Thanks for watching, folks, and have a great day.